Hello all and welcome to the channel. So I'm in a bit of a somber mood today, and that's because of the Glazers, literally Avram and Joel Glazer, and their continued kind of messing us about, the fans, messing Erik Ten Hag around, messing him and whoever else is interested in buying Manchester United, and this 7 month, 8 month, whatever it is, saga that's going on, which isn't just stopping a takeover of our club, but it actually is affecting this transfer window and ultimately the future of our club. And on the field, I mean, that they I struggle to wonder what the Glazers truly care about where Manchester United is concerned. I really am concerned about that. Why is that? Well, to start off with, I'll point towards the financial statement that United released just yesterday or the day before. And that pointed to the fact that United are skint, basically. Okay, you can look at the operating profit for the match day ticket sales. You can look at the money in from um, TV rights and image rights and all that stuff. But ultimately, the bottom line is that in the bank, right? Well, as of yesterday, in the bank, United had about £78 million in the bank. And what did that mean? That means that to operate in a transfer window, the Glazers have to use credit. Um, so last summer, when we signed the likes of Casemiro, Anthony, Martinez, Malacia, and so on, we spent roughly around 200 million. And it just turns out that that was all on the credit card. They're all on the credit card, which was no surprise. I mean, the Glazers really haven't, apart from the fact that United, its operating profit is huge, the biggest in its history, but margins are really tight, and operating profit is not income is not profit, and ultimately, United have been relying on credit cards, and those credit cards were maxed out at the end of the summer last year. So United had a credit facility of £200 million, of which they used all of it. And I think, including interest fees, that amount to about £206 million. Now, it had been forecast that that would have been paid off completely, but that's now changed for this quarter. The forecast is there'll be £40 million worth of debt remaining, which means a £160 million credit facility is there again. Now, some people are saying, well, that means United can go out and spend 160 million on the transfer window. Well, if you look at back what the Glazers allowed to happen last summer, it really, yeah, that could happen if you think that's a good thing or not. And also, they've got an extra 100 million that they can draw upon. That's credit. So potentially, if the Glazers were to turn around to Ten Hag and say, "There's 260 million, go and spend," that would literally leave the club almost broke, almost broke. Well, you may have heard in the press and in the papers or wherever you get your Man United news that somehow Erik Ten Hag has got a £120 million budget, and that if he wants to spend more money, then he's going to have to sell. Now, there's an issue with that £120 million budget. I mean, he's been fighting, as you know, he's been trying to fight to sign Mason Mount with three bids. The last bid turned down for £55 million. Then apparently Todd Bowley rang Manchester United, spoke to his counterpart, whoever it was, and made this offer. You can have Mason Mount for £58 million up front and £7 million in add-ons. United, what did they do? They said, we're not willing to pay anything more than 55. Our £55 million offer is still on the table. and walked away. Now, you've got an £120 million budget. You've been talking about and speaking about with and trying to get this guy, Chelsea, to let you buy this guy, Mason Mount, for weeks. So the last 3 weeks, it's been in the press. And all of a sudden, you walk away. Now, my worry there is this £120 million budget real? Or is that fictitious, something created by the press? Because there's two things you can look at, and that's why that's why I've kept this picture of Rabio here. This guy, United would only have had to pay his agent a fee, pay him a signing on fee, and paid his wages. We wouldn't have paid Juventus a penny. He was going to leave on a free, on a free. And I'm not saying I wanted Rabio at the club. I'm not. What I'm saying is we couldn't sign him. And we couldn't sign him because we couldn't commit to the financials. So that again, the question is, where's this £120 million budget figure coming from? Because if we can't sign a free player, who the hell are we going to sign? I mean, it wasn't like it was the first time we were interested. We were in for Rabiot last summer, and we didn't get him, and that was basically down to his mother is his agent, and it came down to wage demands. United weren't willing to meet them. Now, I don't know whether that was the same this time around, but again, it shows that there are, if that is the case, it shows that there are financial pressures, which ultimately led Rabiot's mother to go back to Juventus and strike a deal with them, and it looks like he's staying there. So Mason Mount, we offered so much money. I don't know what the breakdown of that deal was. And obviously started with 40 and maybe went with 50, then went with 55. Now I don't know whether they were say 40 up front and 15 over 3, 4 years, 5 years. I don't know. But looking at a free agent like Rabiot and not being able to sign him because you can't commit to the financials tells me something. It tells me that there are some serious Glazer-led issues at Manchester United. And yeah, okay, 2 weeks today. The transfer window's been open 2 weeks today. And we haven't signed anyone. We're just being linked and linked and linked. And I feel sorry for Erik Ten Hag in all this. I really do. Because ultimately, he's just had one successful season, relatively successful season. I mean, in the history of Man United, winning the Carabao Cup and finishing third is not a successful season. But considering where we were to where we are now, well done, Erik Ten Hag, well done. But the problem is, if we lose David De Gea and there are no finances available, let's say there are no finances. Right now, we're not signed anyone 2 weeks in. So it wouldn't be surprising that by the end of the window, we've just lost players. So David De Gea's gone, and we do end up relying on Henderson. Because maybe what's going on is a bit of a money grab. I mean, look at what's happening with David De Gea's contract. So he was on 350,000 a week, let's say. They wanted to reduce it to about 220. That deal was signed and agreed just a few days ago, and straight after it was agreed, United pulled out. And now there's talk that he may get somewhere around 140, 180,000 pound a week. So you can look at that in two ways. I know that there are people out there who are David De Gea haters, and they're thinking this is just United's way of forcing him out the club. Well, it's a contract extension that he's signing, which United don't have to invoke. So ultimately, he could. United don't have to. I mean, his contract runs out. His actual contract runs out on June 30th. So United don't have to keep him. They can just let him go. He can go on a free. United save 300 odd £1,000 a week straight away. But it's obvious they want to keep him, but they want to keep him on a drastically reduced weekly wage. What? Looking maybe at saving £200,000 a week. That is a guess, but maybe £200,000 a week. Now, why do United need to save £200,000 a week? Because if they're keeping David De Gea, they aren't going to use that budget to bring in another goalkeeper where that £200,000 a week would pay for. Because ultimately, like you've got two goalkeeping number ones. I mean, David De Gea is never going to sign a new contract thinking that he's going to be a number two and sit on the bench. So it really is just about saving money, which is another massive concern. Another massive concern. I personally, honestly, feel so negative about what the Glazers are doing that I honestly don't see how we will sign anyone. It may come to right at the end of the transfer window and we sign a couple of desperate signings. I mean, we were lucky that Casemiro, it was seen as a desperate signing at the time, but ultimately it worked out really well. Now, there's another thing as well you need to know, and that is, and this is to do with that line of credit that United have. When I was saying that it was 200 million in total, the line of credit, yeah, they'd spent 200 and they must have paid 160 back because now there'd be 40 left. Now, right now, if they spent it, that 160 million, it will go on to financials for this year. But come June the 30th, so this coming Friday, if they can then spend that money and that basically that financials gets kicked a little into the long grass. So it doesn't impact the financial statement that was made yesterday or the day before. I can't quite remember when that was. But that means come Friday, there may be a possibility that we start to hear about United making some concrete bids and there being some spending going on. And until that time, I don't think I'll do another transfer window video because it just does look like United, well, Erik Ten Hag, his hands are being held behind his back. And he isn't allowed to commit to anything financially. And that's how you lose the like players like Declan Rice, Casido. I'm not saying we're ever in for these kinds of players, but ultimately, Arsenal, since when have Arsenal been able to outbid Man United? I, I'm disgusted by it. Now, that might be because I'm a little bit biased. I'm a Man United fan and I absolutely dislike. I grew up, I didn't grow up, but I was in my early 20s at the time when Arsene Wenger was at Arsenal and Thierry Henry and so on and so forth. You know what I mean? The Invincibles. And I loved it when we ended that run. I really did. And I really dislike Arsenal as a club. And to be out to I mean, apparently Arsenal have even outbid City for Declan Rice. They've bid 105, and by all accounts, City have bid 90. But that's just what I predicted a couple of weeks ago. City are just looking to inflate the price for other clubs, and that's all they're doing. Um, but right now, nothing's definite, like always in football transfers. And they've put their bid. Arsenal have put their bid in, but nothing certain. Nothing certain. So the question is, would you max out the credit card to sign the likes of Declan Rice or Anana or Osimhen or Harry Kane and so on? How far into the black hole of Man United's finances would you go to bankroll Erik Ten Hag's transfer window? Or would you stick with the same squad that you've got now, literally? Start next season with the squad you ended last season with, just to put United back in let's say, a firmer financial footing. I mean, that's obviously assuming the Glazers don't then take that money for themselves. But what would you do? Let me know in the comments below. Please smash a like on the video, and thanks for watching. Thank you.